In a peaceful suburban neighborhood, a husband's frantic 911 call shattered the morning calm. He claimed a violent, masked intruder had just murdered his wife in their own home. To first responders, it seemed like a horrifying home invasion, but the victim had left behind a silent witness that would dismantle his story piece by piece. This digital ghost would reveal a web of betrayal that went deeper than anyone could have imagined. Connie Margarata was born on the last day of July in 1976 in Rockville, Connecticut. She was the cherished youngest child of Kenneth and Cindy Margarata. Her older brother Keith carried a tender memory throughout his life, being brought to the hospital by his father, pressing his small hands against the nursery window as a nurse held up his baby sister. From that first glimpse, she became the radiant light of their family. Growing up in the neighboring towns of Vernon and Ellington, Connie displayed remarkable zest for life from an early age. She wasn't just involved in activities, she excelled. At Ellington High School, she was a dedicated student with a vibrant social presence, graduating with the class of 1995. Her academic journey continued at the University of Connecticut, where she earned her undergraduate degree in 1999. Friends from this era consistently described a young woman who embraced every experience with infectious, joyful enthusiasm that drew people toward her naturally. Channeling that drive into her professional life, Connie built an impressive career in the competitive field of pharmaceutical sales. She worked for several firms, honing her skills, before landing a position as a sales representative at Banessa Pharmaceuticals. Here, her natural warmth and sharp intellect propelled her to the top tier. Her professional profile would later show she consistently ranked in the company's top 20% and had earned multiple President's Club awards, one of the highest honors in sales. Yet for Connie, this wasn't just about numbers. Colleagues noted she took genuine pride in being a trusted resource for the physicians and pharmacists she served. But all her professional accolades paled next to the role she cherished most: family. On a sunny Independence Day in 2003, she married Richard Dabate, a computer network administrator she had been dating for several years. Richard was 2 years her junior and possessed a markedly different personality. Where Connie was outgoing, effortlessly warm, and socially engaged, Richard was often described as reserved, technically minded, and possessing a somewhat quirky sense of humor. To outsiders, they seemed like a complementary pair. The couple settled into a beautiful, 4-bedroom colonial home at 7 Birchview Drive in Ellington, a property valued in the mid-six-figure range. Their family soon grew with the arrival of 2 sons, Richard Jr., affectionately called RJ, born in 2006, and Connor, born in 2009. For Connie, motherhood was her ultimate calling. When Connor was born with a cleft lip, requiring multiple surgeries and ongoing care, Connie transformed into his fiercest advocate. She meticulously coordinated his treatments, often driving him back and forth to specialists in Boston. She did this while simultaneously caring for her own ailing father, who was battling leukemia. Friends would later say that despite the awards on her wall, Connie's proudest title was simply Mom. Her generosity spilled into the community. An active member of the Ellington Ambulance Corps, she served as vice president for years, organizing fundraisers and coordinating volunteers. She was the neighbor who delivered homemade meals to those who were sick and the first to offer help in a crisis. In her tight-knit community, she earned a heartfelt nickname, the sunshine of so many lives. From the outside looking in, the Dabate family portrait was idyllic. A beautiful home, 2 successful careers, 2 healthy boys, and a mother who was the anchor of her community. Friends acknowledged the normal marital friction, often centering on finances and Richard's spending habits, but nothing that seemed catastrophic. However, beneath this pristine surface, a corrosive secret was festering. By 2015, a subtle strain had entered the Dabate household. Those closest to Connie noticed she seemed unusually stressed, frequently worried about money. Richard had developed patterns of withdrawing funds from joint accounts without discussion, and there were questionable charges that raised Connie's concern. But the true threat to their marriage wasn't financial, it was personal. It had a name, Sarah Ganza. Sarah was a woman from Richard's past, someone he had known since their junior high school days in Manchester. Their history was intermittent but recurring. They had brief romantic encounters in 2005, 2007, and 2008, each time while Richard was married to Connie. After Sarah's own marriage ended in divorce in 2014, she moved back to Manchester. She and Richard reconnected, initially as friends. By May of 2015, that friendship had escalated into a full-blown physical affair. Then, in June, came the life-altering revelation. Sarah was pregnant. Faced with this reality, Richard made a promise. He assured Sarah he was planning to divorce Connie, and that they would build a future together for their new child. Sarah, for her part, later testified she never pressured him to leave his family. She was prepared to raise the child alone, but Richard kept offering a future he couldn't seem to grasp. His story became a cycle of contradiction. In June, he talked of preparing the house for sale. By August, he was waffling, suggesting he might stay. In November, he was back to claiming he and Connie were on the same page about divorcing. This exhausting emotional roller coaster continued as Sarah's pregnancy progressed, leaving her uncertain and emotionally drained. Through all this, Connie Dabate remained tragically unaware. From her perspective, her marriage was going through a difficult but manageable phase. Shockingly, in that same November of 2015, she sent Richard a romantic text accompanied by a photo, a gesture of intimacy completely disconnected from his dual reality. The very day before she sent that message, Richard had texted Sarah to reassure her about the divorce. Connie's digital footprint shows no mention of marital collapse to friends or family. Instead, it reveals growing, undefined anxiety. On the morning of December 23rd at 8:58 a.m., she sent a Facebook message to a psychotherapist. "I would like to make a hypnosis appointment. There's a lot going on right now." She would never get to keep that appointment. Richard Dabate was now in an impossible vice. He confessed his fears to his cousin at a summer gathering. He was terrified of becoming the black sheep of the family when the pregnancy was revealed. To his best friend, he voiced a more pragmatic terror, that in a divorce, he would lose everything. The house, custody of his boys, his financial stability. The walls were closing in. On one side was a pregnant mistress expecting him to deliver on his promises. On the other, a crumbling marriage that threatened his entire way of life. The pressure reached a breaking point. Wednesday, December 23rd, 2015, dawned with the excited chatter of children on the brink of Christmas vacation. 9-year-old RJ and 6-year-old Connor got ready for school. Connie prepared for her regular 9:15 a.m. spinning class at the local YMCA. Richard stated he left for work between 8:30 and 8:40 a.m. But the home's own electronic heartbeat tells a different story of that morning. A story of a man who never left. At 8:26 a.m., Facebook was accessed from the home computer. At 8:37, a Google search for long-lasting tattoo ideas was conducted from that same machine. At 8:46, Connie's Fitbit, clipped securely to her hip, registered her leaving the house. Then, a critical electronic footprint. At 8:47, the home security alarm was armed using Richard's key fob, a device with a very limited physical range of only about 500 feet. Almost instantly, an attempt was made to disarm it from his mobile phone. This sequence strongly suggests someone was still at home, physically present, manipulating the system. Connie arrived at the YMCA at 8:53, her cheerful demeanor captured on the security tape. By 9:08, she was seen leaving. Her class had been unexpectedly cancelled. During this precise window, at 9:18 a.m., someone visited the YMCA's website from the Dabate home computer. Was someone monitoring her movements, confirming her schedule? At 9:23, Connie's garage door opened as she returned home earlier than usual. Her Fitbit faithfully logs this entry. For the next 17 minutes, the device records normal, ambient movement through the house. The steps of someone going about their morning. At 9:40 and again at 9:46 a.m., Connie posts 2 cheerful, mundane videos to Facebook from her living room. She is alive, well, and utterly unaware of any danger. Then, the tracker captures a final, telling burst of activity. 1,217 feet of walking within her home between 9:46 and 10:05 a.m. This is not the pattern of someone fleeing in terror. It is the measured pattern of daily life, perhaps tidying up, checking on things, moving from room to room. At 10:05 a.m., all movement ceases abruptly. The Fitbit goes permanently silent. 7 minutes later, at 10:12 a.m., the home's panic alarm is activated from Richard's key fob. He would later tell police he received security alerts while driving and had emailed his boss to say he was returning home to check on the issue. But cell tower records placed his mobile phone in the vicinity of his house all morning, contradicting his claimed location. The scene first responders encountered was bizarre and immediately raised suspicions. Richard Dabate was found in the kitchen, partially bound to a metal folding chair with zip ties, sporting superficial, non-life-threatening cuts on his legs and torso. He launched into a detailed, almost cinematic story. A camouflaged, masked intruder with a voice like actor Vin Diesel had been robbing them, had demanded PIN numbers, and, when Connie came home and inexplicably ran to the basement, had followed and shot her. In the basement, police found Connie's body. She had been shot twice at close range with a .357 Magnum revolver, a gun Richard had purchased just 2 months earlier. The weapon was found pristine, wiped clean of fingerprints. To seasoned investigators, the story felt staged from the beginning. There was zero evidence of forced entry at any window or door. Valuables and cash were left completely untouched. Most damningly, 3 separate police K-9 units brought to the scene to track the supposed intruders sent all failed completely. One tracking dog, named Rocky, repeatedly circled back to Richard Dabate himself, showing intense interest in the husband. The Connecticut State Police Eastern District Major Crime Squad, working closely with prosecutor Matthew Gdansky, embarked on one of the most comprehensive digital forensic investigations in the state's history. The cornerstone of their case was Connie's Fitbit. Expert witnesses, including researchers who studied the device's accuracy, testified that the hip-worn tracker was scientifically precise. Its data was irrefutable. Connie Dabate was alive and actively moving around her home until 10:05 a.m., a full hour after her husband claimed she had been killed during a home invasion. The 1,217 feet of steps were analyzed as incidental movements, consistent with household activity, not with a violent struggle or flight. The home alarm system logs formed a second, unshakable pillar of evidence. The system kept meticulous records, and these logs completely contradicted Richard's timeline, placing him at the house when he claimed to be miles away. His personal computer search history revealed a sinister premeditation stretching back months, searches for deadly over-the-counter pill combinations, fast, untraceable homemade poison, and detailed information about ricin. The motive for the crime was crystallized by Sarah Gans's emotional testimony. Through tears, she outlined their long, complicated history and Richard's panicked, broken promises once she became pregnant. The prosecution argued this converging pressure, financial, social, and personal, was the catalyst that led to murder. Richard's behavior in the days and weeks following the crime further sealed the portrait of his guilt. Just 5 days after burying his wife, he attempted to claim her $475,000 life insurance policy. When that was initially delayed due to the investigation, he systematically began draining over $90,000 from her personal investment and savings accounts. By the time of his trial, a family member testified with devastation that only about $6 remained of the savings Connie had meticulously built for her son's futures. He had liquidated almost everything. For nearly 7 years, Richard Dabate maintained his innocence, living free on bail while the legal process slowly moved forward. Finally, in April 2022, his trial began. The mountain of digital evidence was presented methodically. The jury deliberated and returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts, including murder. At his sentencing hearing, where he was given a sentence of 65 years in prison, he stood and stated, "I am here as an innocent man." His words rang hollow to the courtroom, filled with Connie's family and the investigators who had pieced together the truth. His conviction was upheld by the Connecticut Supreme Court in early 2025, setting a significant legal precedent for the use of fitness tracker and digital activity data as evidence in criminal trials. Richard Dabate, now incarcerated, will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Connie's sons are being raised by a loving extended family, supported in part by a community education fund established in her memory, a lasting testament to the light she truly was. Her family's final request is simple. Remember Connie not for the tragedy of how she died, but for the joy, love, and genuine sunshine she brought into the world every day. In a final, tragic irony, the The very technology she used to measure her steps in life became the definitive instrument for measuring justice after her death. If this deep dive into a case where modern technology exposed a hidden truth has gripped you, please help us bring more such stories to light. Like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more compelling explorations of mystery, justice, and the undeniable human story behind the headlines.